All right, we are now streaming live on YouTube. Hello, Zionsville. I'm Emily Styron, your dedicated servant here in the town, serving as mayor. I'll let the rest of these young men introduce themselves. All right, we are now streaming live.
I don't know if there's any other young men left on this call, but I'll go. Josh Garrett here, Town Council President.
Hi, I'm Scott Robinson. I'm the Superintendent of Schools in Zionsville.
Super. Well, we had a handful of questions come in from those of you who wanted to get some more information today. And then we also have questions specific for Dr. Robinson. And so we're just going to jump right in. One of the first questions is, under the previous administration, monthly access to the many boards and committees were available online, and that included agendas and minutes. Can I still access these? And the answer is yes. Just to repeat, our website address is www.zionsville-in.gov. And then you would, from there, /agenda center, all one word. You can also search on the website for new agendas or meeting minutes. You can also sign up to receive email notifications from our website to get both agendas and meeting minutes as they are posted, to get notification of that. Now you are also able to access previous meeting recordings from the town's YouTube page. This has been the case for years, but we are increasing the content on this page just because of how many of our boards and commissions are being held virtually and therefore have video recordings of their proceedings. So I take advantage of checking those things out. And thanks for that question. The next question is with regard to road closure barriers on Whitestown Road by Zionsville United Methodist Church and the speed monitor at the Cobblestone entrance. This was first an appreciation for having that in place. Then the question is, with the closure of 875, will anything more be done to prevent Cobblestone Lakes from becoming a detour? Construction and service trucks and teenagers, poor teenagers, looking to get to 875 Sports Complex are going to cut through. There's a concern for speeding in this area as a result. Chief Spears has indicated that more police will be patrolling the subdivision during this detour period, and that they will monitor the traffic flow and make any, help to encourage folks to respect the neighborhood speeding, posted speeding speeds. Don't speed through Cobblestone, I think, is the takeaway.
Don't speed, right?
Right, don't speed.
Right.
Except I have to admit, it's really hard going 35 down Ford Road the whole way. Don't you think?
I have no comment.
It's a struggle. All right, I should talk to somebody about that.
Part of that's County Road, though, remember, so that's harder than you may think.
Yes. So we'll just keep, gritting our teeth and driving slow.
Actually, it's kind of, not to go too much on a tangent, but again, things you learn when you're in government. We've talked to Lance every once in a while. You get, hey, could you make this speed limit higher or lower? And it's not just an arbitrary decision. All of that is really kind of based on science and based on speed studies. And what Lance always tells me is, it's a careful what you ask for, because for people who say this is too high of a speed limit, there is a possibility a speed study could be done and it recommend a higher speed limit, and vice versa. The speed limit is too low and it could recommend something even lower. So it is not just someone arbitrarily going out there and saying that's 30, that's 35, that's 40. it really is state guidelines on how those are set and how those are reset.
Right, right. Do you happen to know how often the state comes back out to just measure any changes in the volume and the condition of the road, those sorts of things?
Well, I think that's we had Lance on as a special guest about a month ago. I think that's a great follow-up for him. I don't know. I don't know if it's as requested or if it's on a schedule. I know that we do, a regular study of the quality of the roads.
Right.
I don't know what happens from a speed standpoint. Given the number of roads in the state, I have a hard time believing the state's out there doing a bunch of speed studies.
Sure. Yeah.
Rolling over time, but Lance would be great to answer that one at some point.
Well, great. Thanks for that diversion. That
Yeah.
was super. Okay. We've got, there's a community member who has asked us to identify or locate 2 plaques that had been a part of the volunteer fire department that had been awarded to both fire department members and the volunteer ambulance members in the past, and has requested that we find them and display them for the public to see. And mostly just it reiterated that Zionsville history is important, and let's make sure that it's put on display. So we did reach out to the Zionsville Fire Department to ask them if they could locate these, and they can. They are actually in storage at Town Hall. For that individual who asked for this information, we'll definitely send you a photo of these, and then we can think through how we identify some of these historic items that we have in storage and think about how they might be displayed in Town Hall on a going forward basis. So thanks for sending that idea, and we are going to think through how we might take advantage of that suggestion. Now, the next item has to do with people in the community who maybe don't realize that we have a leash law. The town of Zionsville does require that when you are walking your dog, when your dog is not in your home or behind either a fence, whether it's a physical fence or an electric fence, that your dog is on a leash and that a human is holding that leash. It's very important that those of you who have dog, even if your dog is terrific and walks right by your side, it's important for your dog safety, other people's safety, and for other dog safety that we all are ensuring that we are abiding by this law. So the other question that followed this is, what does the town do to address the lack of leash compliance? So when someone is not following that law, what we do ask is, particularly if you are out in any of the public park spaces, if you do encounter someone whose dog is not on a leash, it doesn't hurt to say, hey, a leash is required for your dog out in public. It's also entirely appropriate for you to call the police department so that they understand. And if there's a bicycle patrol person or a foot patrol person in the area that can come and make sure that that resident understands that it is their responsibility to keep their dog on a leash. The police department can also work with the Boone County Animal Control to supplement any efforts if it's an actual stray animal that needs to be removed, particularly if there is something, if this is a wild animal that is out and about, not particularly a dog. So either way, calling Zionsville Police Department is a step to take to make sure that there is an intervention, especially if you know the owner of the animal. Josh, has this issue come up in the past? Like, I know that Julie and I have seen this quite frequently now that we're here on the our offices look out on the trail. How has this the leash law been discussed in the past?
It's not really come up in the past, but I think it's sort of a theme, which is, it's not easy if you see something to confront that person. And sometimes it's not, it's kind of dangerous to confront someone, right? I mean, everyone loves their dog, and I'm sure their dog is harmless, and there's no real like easy way to do that. I think the one thing I remember from former police chief Knox and current police chief Spears is, ZPD is here for us as residents. And, if you hear a bump in the night, or if you see something that's just making you uncomfortable, a dog off a leash, or a, suspicious car that's driving around, or whatever it might be, to call them. And, it may not be practical in terms of, all right, you see someone walking on a leash, CPD has a great response time, but by the time they get there, that person's moved on, or they've gone in the house, or whatever. But I think it does two things. One is it may not be too late. And, two is it certainly records it so that we can start tracking things and know, what other, if we're suddenly getting a ton of runs to a certain neighborhood for, leash violations, we at least know that we can increase patrols there. We can be a little bit more proactive about it. So, if you know your neighbor, have a friendly conversation. I always encourage that, but it's not always the easiest path to take. And so never feel like you're taking away valuable resources if you've got a concern.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I think it all, it sort of dovetails into some of the things that both Julie and I heard, and I'm sure you've heard as well over the years, that a lot of our residents, dog owner residents, would love to see a dog park here in Zionsville. And I think that's another area the town can focus our efforts on, is to try to provide some more opportunities for dogs to have off-leash experiences in the community.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Next question. Why is Holiday Road closed? It has been it has been closed at least since we moved here in August of 2019. Is it a public or a private road? And if public, is it closed to all traffic or just cars? I have seen someone move the sign back and forth for his car. That's a personal thing. Okay, so this is a county road. It's been closed by the county due to damage that was incurred on the bridge, an accident that happened. And the road is not planned to reopen at all. Not for
friendly calling it an accident.
I know. I'm trying.
Someone ran their ginormous tractor over it and thought that would be a good idea.
They did. Yes. Yeah. Very unfortunate.
Unfortunate, yes.
Very unfortunate indeed. So the bridge is being replaced, or has been replaced, but it will be open for pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic. The road is not going to be reopened. Aside, other than for public vehicle, maybe emergency management vehicles potentially, it will not be. It will not continue to be a through road for car traffic.
I guess one thing to add to that. I mean, there are some homes back there. I think there's maybe 4 homes back there.
Mm-hmm.
So Holiday Road is no longer a cut through from 421 or Michigan Road over to Pleasant View Road like it once was, because of that bridge incident, and as it's part of now the Holiday Farms overall property and golf course and development. To your point, it's going to be kind of a centerpiece of historic significance to show what was there and what is there, but now for pedestrians or maybe golf carts, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, right.
To the comment of seeing someone moving the sign back and forth, I don't know that this for certain, but I suspect it may be one of the residents back there that that is their way in and out, and so they probably do need to get back there. I think the closed signs there, so that people just don't go meandering down there and see a closed bridge, or if their navigation is taking them and they aren't paying attention, they try to go over the closed bridge. So that's I think why why you may still see limited traffic there. That's, call it local traffic, not through
Sure.
traffic.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that may be a takeaway for us to think about the longer term signage that we put in place to make it more clear for those who are in and around that space that this is for the very small number of local traffic that has to
Yeah.
access the bridge.
Yes.
All right. Okay, super. Another question this week about, is Zionsville Town Hall fully staffed? And I want to reiterate, and as long as this question is asked, I'll keep reiterating it. Town Hall has been fully staffed throughout the coronavirus situation. While the Town Hall facility has had periods of closure, there's generally been several people here every day since that time frame. Remember that we have our emergency management operations center here in Town Hall, and that's been open for the entirety of this pandemic. We also have emergency management staff personnel who are located here in Town Hall, and they have continued to report to this building to undertake their work. I think what maybe this question is getting to is, are more people coming into Town Hall and working physically here versus working remote from another location, likely their home, which has been the case. And the answer to that question is yes. We do have more staff coming into work during the week. We are still working to limit the number of people who are here on any given day, again, to allow for social distancing and to continue to strive to keep our workforce healthy. That's a primary concern for us. But we have, your town government has continued to work full time for you from the beginning and will continue to do that. We have not opened Town Hall up to the public yet. We're still really working to make sure that what we do from a opening on a public perspective is more aligned with what the school system is doing. We want to do our part to limit the opportunities for community spread of COVID-19. And yeah, so I think that covers that question. Did you have anything else to add, Josh?
No, I mean, the implication of the question kind of just annoys me that, like, we've been on a government holiday for the last 4 months.
Have not been on a holiday.
No, I mean, if people may not be physically there, but, much like our own employees, we haven't been in our office since March 10th, and we're not going back at least until the end of August, I think. That doesn't mean that we're all sitting around. Everyone is still doing things. There may be certain limitations on some services that need to be present, like fingerprinting, for example, that it's a mild inconvenience. But to imply, I suppose, that everyone's just been at home on a 4-month vacation is not remotely true. Everyone has been working. They're paid to work. They can take time off if they need to, days off if they need to. But, much like we care about the health of the residents, we care about the people that work for us. And in some unknown situations, especially earlier in this pandemic, it was the prudent move. And so I've not noticed a miss in meetings and information getting and things getting processed. It just happens to be the new way of the world, which is a lot of organizations doing this. Scott, from a school perspective, I mean, it's kind of interesting. You guys have gone through this too. But I mean, your administrative staff, I assume, had some sort of plan to, even if they weren't in the administrative building, were probably accomplishing many things through virtual meetings and working from home. Is that a correct statement?
That's right. And no one has had a day off unless they've taken the day off because of illness or a personal day or that sort of thing. We continue to operate those protocols. We are going to open our central office on July 6th, merely because in less than 4 weeks after that, we are opening schools. So we have materials and things that get amassed across the summer that have to be distributed and accounted for and those sorts of things. So we do need some in-person hands in July.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. We have published that Zionsville has hired a new HR manager and CFO, and one resident asked, are these two positions new employees or replacing previous employees? Both of these positions started with an existing vacancy. They were reclassified into these positions, and they were fully funded with existing budget dollars. I think the person who submitted that question just wanted to get a better sense of were these net new positions, or were they already funded with our current budget? We're
Yeah, and
incredibly excited to have both of them too. They've hit the ground running, and they're adding a lot of value to the town.
And I met Tammy, our new CFO. She's awesome. I mean, I think she's going to put in processes and systems that'll save us so much money, make us more efficient, kind of bring us into modern times. You know, if you sort of step at a macro level in terms of a budgeting standpoint, there's kind of two things going on there. One is, yes, the town does add staff. That's not a bad thing because the town is growing. And so if you don't add staff, or you don't modernize equipment, or you don't keep up with demands, you know, that's a bigger problem than a bigger payroll, as long as you're living within your means. And so I think that's where the partnership between council and the mayor comes into play, in terms of, you know, the budget is set at the beginning of the year. The budget is certified by the state. And as needs may change over time, there's discussions to go on in terms of, all right, you know, that money needs to move here. What does that mean? You know, it's not adding positions. We can't raise taxes, but it may mean, you know, all right, we're not going to buy this filing cabinet because we need to buy this stapler over here. And we didn't anticipate that at the beginning of the year. And that process happens every year. It'll start firing up again here in the summer for 2021, where we'll go through the whole thing. Here are all the sources that we're going to get from a funding standpoint. Here's all the demands for those. Here's what we can afford. And let's live within that. And it's never perfect, but we work together to make it as best as we can over the course of the year.
Absolutely. And, you know, just like all of our personal finances, we live within our means, and some things happen that we didn't expect. And that can either create maybe unexpected income. And so you start to think what you might do with it. Or in the case of this current public health emergency, we start to look at the areas where what we projected are likely not going to come to pass because of this situation. So I think that what's more likely is that as we continue through this budget year, we'll start looking for areas where we need to cut back because of potential revenue shortfalls. All right. We had several questions that came in with regard to wearing masks in public and just wearing masks in general. So we wanted to kind of pull all of these together and answer them just in a couple of brief statements. So one person was interested in, pointed out that Carmel has an entire campaign around wearing is caring, as it relates to promoting and encouraging residents to use face masks, facial coverings. We have encouraged mask wearing in public through signage, through public or social media, and through conversations, even in terms of the conversations we've had during these sessions. And we'll continue to do that. I think that the message is being promoted at the federal level, the state level, and at the local level, that wearing a face mask promotes public health. It's something that all of us doing will help to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. I also think that when you're outdoors, the guidance is more, has a lot more discretion, that the science isn't entirely clear in terms of how the transmission is potentially mitigated when you're outdoors. When you're indoors, however, there is a much stronger position around wearing facial coverings. And from the town's perspective, we're really continuing to push that message and to encourage you when you're inside a building, wearing a mask is protecting everyone around you. And those who are wearing masks are protecting you from that transmission, potential transmission. But we are not Carmel. And so putting tens of thousands or more dollars into a public campaign is not something we're going to do. I think at this point, we've stated guidance. I'm sad to say this, but I feel like this has become one of those bickering lines that sadly our whole entire country seems so great at creating this, this is a liberal agenda issue, or this is, a conservative issue. And this political dialogue around public health is just frustrating to me. Like, it's science. This isn't, this really should be all of us in for each other and working to do what we can to keep the rest of our community safe. I don't wear a mask when I ride my bike on the trail. I think I tried that once. It was really kind of hard for me to do that. And I don't know that I feel like that's a real risk, but I am wearing a mask inside every building that I go in, unless I am the only person in a room with a closed door. So it's important for us to just think through, why are we, what's the resistance to wearing a face covering, and think about the rest of the community in terms of when you're out considering that as an option.
Yeah, I mean, I think the resistance, part of it is political, which I don't understand, but part of it is like, face masks suck, right? I mean, it sucks. I hate wearing them. I hate smelling my own breath. I hate everything about them, but they work, right? I mean, it's been proven to be effective in avoidance of transmission. And the only way to get in front of that is to do that. In fact, I read a story the other day, just yesterday. There were a couple of hairstylists, and they unknowingly had coronavirus, and they did the hair of 140 people, but they wore masks the whole time they did the hair. And of those 140 people, no one got coronavirus from them. So these were two active sort of spreaders. Although who knows who spreads, who's not. But they saw 140 people, both wore masks, both were active, they didn't spread at once. And so, yes, it sucks, but do it for yourself and do it for your fellow citizens. There you go, and make it your own. Make it stylish.
My soon-to-be third grader and I were talking about a face mask for him going back to school, and I think it's for kids trying to make this fun and thinking through, what sort of superhero or villain they can become through that exercise. That's what our family is trying to do, is how do we turn something into kind of a more of a fun thing.
So good transition perhaps with having Dr. Robison on here. Scott, I read an article a couple of days ago from Sick Kids in Toronto. It's the leading children's hospital in Canada that I actually spent quite a bit of time at growing up, for another story. But they came out with a study that basically said, they weren't so sure that kids needed masks at school. Teachers certainly yes, but the findings they had were a couple-fold. One was it seemed very rare that COVID-19 was being passed from adults to children, and that there were psychological considerations, mental health considerations around not only masks, but also sort of, not going back to school and sort of the delays associated with that social and mental health component of that. So, Mayor, if you don't mind, maybe Scott, if you could kind of talk through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think everyone's wanting to know, what are the school plans? What are you guys thinking? I took the survey. I know my wife did too. I'm sure you did too, Mayor. The floor is yours to talk about this. I think it's probably the most interesting thing of this town hall.
I really think that the defining issue of going back to school is about masks. I think that's pretty clear from the phone calls I've gotten from the folks who wanted to engage me in a heated argument about it. And you know, the toting counsel or a pediatrician note that their child cannot wear a mask, and you know, how dare you even suggest it. Of course, I'm going with CDC guidelines. By the way, those are supposed to be updated this week. I heard yesterday from Dr. Surveys at the County Health Department that the CDC has indicated sometime this week they're going to update mask guidelines. And it may be inclusive of some of the things that we're reading about transmissibility child to child, and you know, who is best protected by a regimen of mask wearing in high traffic areas, or for instance, on a bus when it's very difficult to socially distance on a bus. But Dr. Box from the Indiana State Department of Health indicated that face coverings are a really good adjunct in mitigating disease spread when social distancing is difficult. Certainly a bus is one of those times. And so what you'll see from us, at least so far as we know at this point, and we're still working with the County Board of Health, as you may have heard, there were a lot of documents of guidance, but at the end of the day, we are relying on our county health officials to assist us in knowing what our protocols need to be. The three superintendents in Boone County have been working together with Dr. Surveys and his crew. They've been amazing at just, you know, giving us the information they've been reading and the directive they've seen. I really see this issue as a social contract issue. Just like I don't think that driving on the right side of the road and not crossing the center line is a partisan political thing. It's just good common sense, you know, putting your dog on a leash when your dog might attack somebody, or, you know, attack a smaller dog or something. These are social contract issues. And for some unknown reason, it has been politicized in a way that causes people to say, you will not, superintendent, you will not allow my child, you will not force my child to wear a mask. When in fact, if teacher was calling 3 kids to the reading table and they're distancing so that she can have some time with them, the teacher may say, now this is a mask recommended time, because keep in mind, we have adult employees, and if asymptomatic children are spreading it, adult employees could definitely get it. And that teacher with a face covering on is really protecting the children. And in some cases around our schools, I strongly suspicion that we will be asking folks to don a mask to protect others. Again, a piece of the social contract. So I know that that will be controversial for some people. The good news is we do have in mind, and the details are being worked out by some great folks who are working on our 2 task force lanes to offer an online option. We did March through May online. It wasn't perfect, but wow, were parents amazing. And many students found it to be a great way to do school, given that we had to do it. We suspect that there may be some intermittent closures. There may even be a forced longer closure at some point. So we've been working on ensuring that we're evolving our online options and how we do that to make them not synchronous, perhaps, although that may be part of it as well, but to ensure that we have a sequence that doesn't disadvantage folks who are using the option of being online. So that if they come back to school, or if we have a very reliable treatment and COVID-19 is less of an issue, then people can come back in and catch on with the right gait to simply walk forward in the school year. Sorry for the ramble. We did have questions, I know, and the first one for me was about masks, as I boot my computer back up here. And so I think, you know, CDC guidelines right now say that students should wear a face covering. That's what they say today. We will, as we've talked with the county folks, we've indicated that strongly recommended is probably the tack that we're taking as of today's guidance. That may ebb and flow, as you know, in the next 40 days as we near school. So we'll just keep people informed as we go forward. Some folks may be upset about that. The other thing I wanted to say is that I think it would be very rare for a 2nd grade boy whose parents have said, you will not wear a mask, and I hope there aren't a lot of folks doing that, but I've heard from some of those people. I think the child may be disadvantaged, his or her peers, in that he may want to wear a mask to be like all the others who are doing it at that point. So we deal with those sorts of things in working with nearly 8,000 families every year, and we'll work through them hopefully with as much finesse as anyone can muster. So the second question for me today was about the survey and the survey results. The only result I have thus far is that last evening about 6 p.m. we were at nearly 5,000 responses.
Wow.
And consider that we send it to 9,000, but often that is two parents getting it and a grandparent or some other person who's looking in to our school messaging. So that is very likely a high representation of all the families with kids in our school. So I think that's a great thing. We'll start to see the first returns tomorrow afternoon and plan accordingly with what those things say about how many folks want the online option and what sorts of things we can infer from that. Another question for me was about, are we on track to open facilities on July 1st? As you may know, the governor essentially closed all school facilities until the end of June. And so, yes, we will be putting back up our basketball hoops and opening our playgrounds and opening the tennis courts, for instance, putting tennis nets up. By the way, that's the one I've received the most calls about. And so I'm sorry as the person from the school district, but the governor was pretty emphatic that we could not have folks on our school grounds. So that will all abate on July 1, and I hope folks are sensible when they go out to do a pickup basketball game and it's not an element of disease spread. I don't know if we've gotten any other questions.
So, I mean, I guess, Scott, from a parent perspective, I appreciate all the work you guys have been doing. I feel fully confident sending my kids back within, I mean, I like the way that you frame up this social contract, but I also like that, if it's one thing for a private business to say must require a mask, right? Costco, for example. If I want to go to Costco, I got to wear a mask. And if I don't want to wear a mask, I can't get into Costco. With school, yes, there are alternatives, but some may not be financially affordable. Some may not be time affordable if you're trying to homeschool. So I appreciate that, for those parents, for their own reasons, prefer to have, their children not wear a mask, then they can not wear a mask from home and still participate in the education process, if that's what they feel is best for their child without necessarily impacting everyone else's child for their own personal choice. So I think that's a great compromise for those folks.
We also have some children with legitimate health concerns that preclude mask wearing. And so I didn't mean to leave that part of the conversation out just because some folks have been pretty aggressive about it. In fact, there are young children who may have some real anxiety issues related to seeing everyone else in a mask. Mm-hmm. So it is an enterprise for 7,500 kids, but we have to take these cases individually. And so we'll work with those families and with those little guys and girls to make sure that they're not scared. We'll work on that with them as well. And I suspect that there will be some folks who start in person who find, for instance, if it's a passing period or headed to the bathroom, that sort of thing, where people are moving about, we will probably ask that masks go on. That's part of our evolving plan that we're working with the health department on to mitigate spread. So we may see some kids who come to school in person, and then in week 2 they say, no, this just isn't for me. I need to go home and do this online. We're going to work our darndest to accommodate them really, really well.
Do you have any preliminary data on how many students might prefer or choose the online option?
We'll know more tomorrow because that was part of the survey. I don't have preliminary data from here. I do know that from around the metro area, it was anywhere between 5% to about 35% in some suburban school districts. So that's Hamilton County, Hendricks County, where I have a network of superintendent collaborators. So I would suspect that we're going to fall somewhere in that wide range.
Do you think that with regard to those preferences, that after a certain period of time, there's mean, do you get locked into a situation if you say, I'd rather do online school, and then, a month later you're like, never mind? Or have you thought through that?
I think that is a to be determined thing. I wouldn't want people to be locked into something that they didn't want. We are looking at, when we have entrance and exits, then we tend to have discontinuity for the children in terms of their academic challenges. So we may ask, and this is still on the drawing board, we may ask that folks who choose to go online commit to the first quarter, so the first 9 weeks, so that we can make sure that's a continuous effort for those children. But we know that there will be extenuating circumstances, as there always are.
So one more question that just came in has to do with racial unrest and the conversation that our whole country is having right now as it relates to diversity and inclusion, and how our public institutions promote a safe environment for the people that, for the families that entrust their children to us, as it relates to schools. So I know that the ZCS has taken this issue of welcoming and really talking about diversity very seriously. You've been a community leader in that regard. So how will you continue to work anti-racism into your curriculum and into the way that your staff works with our students?
Well, we know that teaching true history is really important. It's one of the reasons that our foundation supported us in making sure that the lion's share of our social sciences teachers in grades 5 through 12 had experiences with looking at history from multiple perspectives. And we did that actually it was right before we closed, it was in February. And several teachers were funded by ZEF, thanks to them, to go see the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, to see the National Monument for Peace, to look at multiple perspectives. They also went to Washington, D.C. and toured the Holocaust Museum and had a very intensive time at the Native American, the American Indian Museum. And so looking through multiple perspective lenses, rather than what has been in the last 100 years, a pretty bland, sort of Eurocentric view that doesn't look at some of the institutions that cause us to have systemic racism in our nation. So simply highlighting that more, having experiences, ensuring, and I tell you, one of the most refreshing things, and we've been on this journey for 4 years, one of the most refreshing things year in, year out is student voice. Mm-hmm. Kids will tell you what their experiences are. And one of the things that just plagues me as a superintendent is that I can't be in every conversation in a passing period when some racial comment is made. Those are often insidious, not trackable. And so reporting those and dealing with those and trying to help young people know that if they are experiencing that view of folks of diversity, it's really at cross purposes with their success in the wider world. And that's part of what we do. We're supposed to raise folks in conjunction with parents to ensure that they can succeed in the wider world. And of course, this area of study and awareness we think is very, very important for the future.
There's a question, that's a great comment there, Scott. A question came in sort of related to that. Are there any diversity initiatives within the education department around recruiting of African-American and other minority staff to be able to give that kind of firsthand perspective to those students? Not necessarily specifically for that goal, in any role really, but is that anything that's on your radar or the school board's radar?
Absolutely. We've been doing the recruitment days at some traditionally Black colleges in the South. We found that often folks will get acclimated to the notion of coming to Indianapolis, and then they might look askance at being one of 10 or 15 African-American teachers in a place when they can go to Washington Township or Pike Township and find a lot more comfort, frankly. It is an important piece of mission, I think, when people come to a place that's not so diverse. And so we like to have that hitched along with someone's mission to uplift kids, but it's difficult. I mean, there was a year, and I can't say the year exactly, it's about 7 or 8 years ago, there were 0 African-American graduates in teacher education in Indiana, in the whole state.
Oh my God, really?
And often in earlier times when I was hiring, I did hiring in Pike Township for many years, and we were looking for, you know, great teachers of diverse backgrounds, and often those folks just didn't ever teach. They would go through teacher education, they would get picked up by a bank or some other sort of profession that they went into. So it is a constant effort that we push forward. We have some of our African American staff members who assist us. We are using LinkedIn to produce some videos that show the diversity of our community and some of the folks who are teaching and leading in our schools. So we're hopeful that this amalgam of things will continue to foster that in the future.
Good to hear. There was a question going back to e-learning, sort of to pivot a little bit. Someone was wondering if their child chose e-learning versus choosing in class, are they effectively going to be following the same curriculum? And is there an expectation that if someone chose e-learning for a semester or for a year, that at the end of that year, they would be on par with a in-class teacher? Or is that even feasible? My kids got through e-learning remarkably quick in a day.
Yeah, you know, that is an evolving piece of our practice. We never set out to be an online school, but we do think that as a result of COVID, we are changed. In fact, one of the things we learned was that there were some students who actually thrived in that setting. And perhaps they were not the best at navigating the social milieu as a young adult. And when they got to do school online, they really flourished. So we learned some things about our delivery that we think will change us in the future. Now, back to that specific question, yes, it's the same curriculum. Folks often misinterpret curriculum as the learning activities that are the lessons. Those are different. And so the online vehicle accommodates a different set of opportunities to teach certain concepts that are in the quote curriculum. That's the board adopted scope of what folks are supposed to learn in a particular course. So it might be different, in fact it will be, because online is different from in person, but we think our obligation, just as anyone who's running an online school, is to make sure that kids are on par. They finished 4th grade online, they should be ready for 5th grade, whether it's online or in person. That's still very much under construction. We are blessed with some amazing technology facilitators for teaching. And one of the other things that was so amazing about March through May, as hard as it was for everyone, we found some folks who were absolute rock stars at creating community online. And they didn't know, because they hadn't really practiced that way day in, day out. So it was really, we know there were lots of hiccups and it was very difficult for families, but we did find a number of silver linings.
Great.
Okay, so this is my question. Is there a hybrid where there's some e-learning and some in class that is going to be an option?
I actually think that needs to be something we have in the future. I'm not sure at this moment, you know, you've heard me talk already in this session, and I sound like it's sort of dichotomous, either you're online or you're in person, right? I do think that there are many ways that we can enhance and expand the curriculum with hybrid offerings. I'm not sure this is the moment when we want to work so hard to do that, because we're getting through COVID.
Sure. No, I get that.
And so there are, you know, a lot of folks think, well, gee, it's just school. It's really not hard. But just like any enterprise, you know, a person who does a schedule at the high school with 2,300 kids and let's say 7 periods per day and all of the requirements, I mean, there are literally 100,000 or more variables in that schedule.
Right.
And so making the opportunity occur, as you well said, in a hybrid setting, where for my learning as a junior, it's most advantageous for me if I take X course online, even if I'm doing it right there in the school, in a
Yeah.
common area perhaps or something. I think those are things that we should be thinking about for the future, because that really gets at the notion of mass customization better than we are at this point.
Yeah. Thank you so much to you and your team. This is, it's remarkable the efforts that you all have had to go through from the very beginning and continue to go to undertake, and the care and concern and the professionalism. We're just so lucky to have all of you in place taking us through this
You're kind to
process.
say that. We are so blessed with the faculty and staff we've built over the years, and leaders like our two strands of the coronavirus task force right now in instructions, Chris Devereaux, and in operations and facilities is Becky Kaufman. And
Rock stars.
they they are running like their hair is on fire because there is so much to do before August 4th. And I should have named names because I could name 400 more, but we really are blessed with great people. And thank you for noticing.
Well, it's a good partnership. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize schools and town are really separate, right? You have your own school board, you have your own funding formulas. You can do as you see as best, but you have a good partnership with the town, which I think in Indiana or even nationwide is rare for schools and towns to sort of be rowing in the same direction all the time. So I think that's a testament to you. Now I do have one small complaint. I just want to throw this out there.
Okay.
You cannot send 9 a.m. Happy Mother's Day texts anymore. You have to send them in the afternoon. Okay, because
It's
you
true.
woke up all the moms, they're all mad.
No,
Then
you
they,
just
then they
did it
yelled at
before
us.
the husbands did, before the
Yeah.
dads.
Was it
Yeah,
9
so-
a.m.?
Yeah, it was 9 a.m. and I never heard the end of it. So it was a nice sentiment. Send it in the afternoon and we'll be good.
I will mark that down and learn from that mistake. Good point.
There's one last question that sort of popped in here at the end around masks. In terms of PPE for teachers and PPE for students, who is responsible for that? Do you have budget for that? Is there any fundraising campaigns that need to be done to raise money for families that can't afford that kind of PPE for their own students, or for the schools to make a gap? How is that being looked at?
Well, as you know, there's been some difficulty in getting masks. It's certainly early May, early June, it was difficult, but there is a lot more availability now. And we know that the state of Indiana will be supplying us with over 7,000 masks for students. So there will be one coming. I don't know if those will be cloth masks or not. We have masks for all employees. And, a board member brought up a good point to me the other day. What about cloth masks being washed and making sure they're being washed? Because he was referencing his own kid with PE clothes that didn't get washed for a semester. So, there are a lot of logistical elements of this, but we will not allow a student to go without. We suspicion that most children, their parents will probably facilitate getting them a mask that they like, that's as comfortable as possible. I think you already said it well about masks suck. I think. But that face covering, as we know, is an important element of the panoply of mitigation strategies we will put in force to try to keep us safe and reduce the intermittent closures that would occur.
Sense. There's a last question. Someone wanted to know, will the high school courses campus be reorganized more in grade level course locations versus curriculum based locations?
That's about high school.
It's about the high school, yeah.
Really pretty impossible to do because freshmen take courses with seniors every year and vice versa, and there's a ton of ebb and flow. So no, it will not be at a grade level way. And I don't want to get in front of our teams working on what instruction is going to look like and how they're going to try to mitigate movement in the building as is one of their charges. But no, it will still be, we're still pretty much a course-driven structure because of requirements as well as wants that children have to study certain things.
I was a senior trying to take the freshman classes to boost my GPA, so I understand that.
I don't believe it.
Okay, there's another question. You're a popular guy here today, Scott. Speaking of PE, will there be indoor PE for middle school or elementary students?
You know, I think that what we've read is that anytime we can do classes outside, we should.
Absolutely.
You know, and particularly where it's vigorous activity and so on. We also may see a situation where we spread out in the school such that we take up the PE space at certain times, like on days when it's pretty and they can be outside. But that will come to a halt, you know, once October and November come around. But yes, I think that with social distancing, as we've seen in the guidelines from the in-class document from the state and from the IHSAA, I think there are ways around issues with indoor PE, and we will practice them.
I appreciate, I mean, one of the things that the mayor and I have always talked about since we started doing these, and by the way, I think these are moving to monthly, just so everyone knows.
Right, that's right.
But we've always tried to follow the CDC guidelines just to not create confusion. You know, we're aligned with CDC, then Boone County, then Zionsville, making sure we're not all having different things. And so as people may have questions, I think looking at those guidelines, I think there's some comfort in knowing I can go to the CDC website and see what they recommend and know that then the schools are going to do it in that same way and then can make a decision based on that rather than just these are sort of one-off scenarios that can constantly happen that can create a lot of confusion.
Absolutely. I think that when I heard from Dr. Servies yesterday that the CDC is anticipating new mask guidelines, he and I both were saying, well, we've seen spikes in 21 states. Will it be more stringent about face coverings? Or because we've seen some studies about low transmissibility from child to child, will it be less stringent? So we really don't know, but the CDC has been updating frequently, and we suspect that we'll see some of this roller coaster ride as we come in on August 4th when we'll start.
Mayor, I think we're out of time. Scott, thanks for joining. Any last comments from you?
Thank you.
I have a couple of things that I should have announced at the top of the hour, and that's we have 2 job openings. We're hiring a patrolman in the police department, and we are also looking for a new superintendent, director of our parks department. So check out our website for more details. It's a great place to work here at the town of Zionsville.
All budgeted.
All budgeted, absolutely.
I am always on the lookout for great bus drivers. It's really a pretty cool gig, and we pay for training. So if anyone is interested in that out there in the community, we need you. Please make my phone ring.
Awesome.
Good idea.
Thanks so much, Scott. It's been terrific. Appreciate your participation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Have a great day, Zionsville.
See ya.